I was one of the lucky people who got to try out the new Switch 2 here in Los Angeles, California. As you all know, not only are they providing new titles for their new console, Nintendo also upgraded some of their fan favorites. The event itself was about 3.5 hours long, which was surprisingly more than enough time for me to see everything I was interested in. The minute I walked into the venue, the staff gave me a postcard which had 6 empty spaces. Here, I was only allowed to try out 6 games, one time each, so I knew I had to choose my options carefully. Thankfully, there are some games that did not count towards this. So here's everything I experienced and my impressions on every game I got to play early. Right off the bat, we were shown the Switch 2 console itself. As you can see, the system is simultaneously bigger and thinner. I even brought my Switch 1 to compare, and you can definitely see the difference. I could have pulled out my Steam Deck just to compare, but not gonna lie, the staff were eyeing me like a hawk. I didn't want to look sus, but just for comparison's sake, the Switch 2 feels lighter than both the Switch 1 and the Steam Deck. The Joy-Cons themselves appear bigger than the first iteration. Despite the different sizes, the Joy-Cons feel roughly the same. If you despise the previous versions, I don't think these will change your mind. Unlike the Switch 1, where the Joy-Cons slide in and out, Switch 2 Joy-Cons stick together by magnets. There's a switch on the back that unlatches the Joy-Cons, and even when detaching them, there's still a little bit of resistance. So if you're worried about the Joy-Cons being ripped off easily, don't worry, it most likely won't happen. The last thing about the console I can point out is the kickstand. Here, it's exactly like the OLED model, which thank God, because the Switch 1 version was too flimsy. After spending 10 or so minutes looking at the console, the staff escorted us immediately to the biggest game of the lineup, Mario Kart World. Actually, there's one more thing I should mention. You may see my gameplay footage look unoptimal. For some reason, this event had an odd rule stating if I was going to record gameplay footage, I have to show a part of my body. I don't know why. It's weird. Anyways, back to what I was saying. We were grouped in pairs and each had a station. I got to race against another player a total of 3 times. First on the big screen, then in handheld, and finally on the big screen again because we still had time. I saw about 30-ish playable characters and possibly double that because they can wear different outfits. Of course, I had to go with my boy, Mariachi Waluigi, but hindsight, I should have went with the cow. The movement feels very similar to Mario Kart 8, but has a few new options. We can grind on rails, which gives us a drift boost. Not shown in my footage, but we were also able to drive briefly on walls, and we can do multiple tricks on the air. I'm not sure if there's a gameplay purpose to this, like giving us a bigger speed boost, or if it's just for show, but it's neat to do multiple tricks in the air. Overall, the movement feels like I'm playing a Sonic game, but in Mario Kart. As for the items, I can't speak too much on any differences because of how chaotic this game was, but I did notice the bullet bill not making me tumble and lose my coins, but rather just pushed me slightly to the side. I could be completely wrong though, it was pretty chaotic. Anyways, after finishing the first race, I got to do it again in handheld mode. The footage you see might not do it justice, but trust me, the screen looks a lot better in person. It's bright and colorful and just nice to see a very smooth game running on a handheld device. Not much to say here, other than there are separate item boxes that contain food. Consuming the food just makes you change costumes. I don't think it serves any gameplay purposes, but only time will tell. After that, I did one more race on the big screen, and this time I chose Seth Rogan Kong. And I proceeded to mop the guy next to me. Okay, real talk. I didn't play too much Mario Kart 8, but all the maps I drove on so far seemed unfamiliar to me. Like this one, which was a cinema for booze. I don't know if any old maps will return, but honestly, I'm okay with just having fresh new maps. Once that was over, the staff moved us to a different booth to try out their new Battle Royale mode called Knockout Tour. This mode is basically racing with 20-ish other players, and each lap we must be above a certain place or else we fail. This also marked the first time I got to try the new Switch 2 Pro controller. Not much to say here other than it feels slightly more sturdier than the Switch 1 version. The back buttons do feel nice to use though. While waiting for everyone else to settle in, I got to briefly drive as for like 30 seconds before switching to Luigi. But while waiting, I got to briefly drive around a very small portion of the open world. I also noticed by pressing down on the D-pad, I was able to rewind my steps and go back a few seconds. I'm wondering if this is just in the waiting lobby or part of the open world mode. Either way, I can't wait to tackle this because it gives me the same feeling as Burnout Paradise, an open world racing game. Anyways, the race starts and I was doing pretty good for a while. I survived the first 3 rounds while maintaining second place until one slip up. And just like that, I got eliminated at 16th place. I can see this mode being very popular because it feels like a marathon. Not only are you trying to be first place, but you also have to survive lap after lap. And one slip on the banana peel can ruin your entire run. So overall, I had a great time with this game. It seems like a huge step forward for the franchise with the open world, new movement options, and stuff like that. Price tag aside, I could definitely see myself enjoying this game as well as just playing it with friends at a party. After playing Mario Kart, the staff allowed us to enter the demo hall, which is where the rest of the Switch 2 games are available. Remember how I said we could only play 6 games, but some of them were freebies? Mario Kart 8 was one of the free ones. The games that were playable in this event were Donkey Kong Bonanza, Metroid Prime 4, Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the Zelda Breath of the Wild duology, the $10 tech demo called Welcome Tour, Mario Party DLC, Dragon Drive, Hogwarts Legacy, Gamecube games, Civilization, Street Fighter 6, Hades 2, Yakuza, and Cyberpunk 2077. Out of all the games I listed, only DK, Zelda, and Welcome Tour were free. The rest counted. So naturally, the first game I ran into was... Look man, I've been waiting for this game for about 8 years. I still can't believe I got to play it, let alone even seeing its existence. Anyways, I digress. The Switch 2 edition for Metroid Prime 4 offers 2 new graphics settings and a new control scheme to play the game. For the graphics settings, the Switch 2 offers 4K 60 FPS and 1080p 120 FPS for docked mode, with handheld mode offering different settings. The event only offered us the 120 FPS mode, and let me tell you, putting aside my Metroid bias for a second, this is easily the best looking Switch 2 title in this venue, and looks even better in person. This is one of the flagship titles that offers the new mouse control scheme, and that's the mode I mostly used for this demo, and will probably use when the game releases. As soon as the demo started, the first thing I did was try to switch between the regular dual Joy-Con setup and the mouse controls, and it switched seamlessly. You can barely see it on the footage, but there's a little crosshair that indicates whether you're on mouse mode or not. Now for the mouse mode itself. I was initially a little uncomfortable, but after adjusting my arm so it was more 70 degrees from my chest and not perpendicular, it clicked. I think the mouse controls will vary between what kind of setup you have at home. Between using the dual Joy-Con scheme and the mouse, the latter felt way more responsive and intuitive. I'm 200% sure the Pro Controller will be compatible using the twin sticks method, but anyone familiar with PC FPS games should definitely try the mouse controls. While Prime was never known for precise aiming, there are some points where you do have to aim at specific spots like a locked door or a boss weakness. When using the dual Joy-Con mode, you use the gyro to aim at said spots. If you ever used the Wii emote, this should feel very familiar. With the mouse, you use the mouse. Both work very well. I don't remember if I tried this in the demo or not, but I think you can use the right stick to aim at those spots too. Keyword, I think. These control schemes are proof that Prime 3 can be remastered or straight up ported to this console. Another neat improvement from previous titles is the movement. In earlier games, you can only sidestep left or right, but here it's omnidirectional. Even transitioning from the Morph Ball feels more fluid compared to Prime 1. Like, look at me, I'm running in all directions. The Morph Ball jump and bombs returned, and something the demo doesn't tell you is the Boost Ball is back. We wouldn't really know because I don't think Retro Studios finished the VFX for the ability yet. Samus's face shows up again when you shoot a charge beam point blank at a wall, and I think her damage grunts are new. I hope Jennifer Hale is reprising her role. Missiles also return, but aside from one section, I hardly use them. Previous games have conditioned me to mostly rely on the charge beam for damage. Even the staff who was watching me pointed that out. I don't recall if previous games had them, but I noticed Prime 4 has QTEs, at least during the boss fight. It only happened when I was grabbed though. The last thing I'll say about the demo is it covers the prologue of the game, which is very action focused, with a lot of things happening all at once. Obviously, we don't know too much about the game, but I hope the rest of it still has the slow-paced atmosphere building environmental storytelling this series is known for. Once I beat the boss, I left the booth knowing that this game would be phenomenal. It was everything I hoped for in a Prime game, and I cannot wait for the game to come out. Next up was Donkey Kong. Now, while Nintendo themselves are keeping the developers' names a secret, I think it's safe to assume it's the same team that worked on Super Mario Odyssey. Donkey Kong hasn't had a new 3D game in over 20 years, so it's nice to see him back in the spotlight. And just like Mario Kart World, we get Seth Rogan Kong. Gonna lie. I grew up with the Kevin Bayliss design, so it's gonna take some time for me to get used to this one. I will say, the new look lets him emote far more than his previous design. Anyways, I digress. While Mario jumps, DK punches. In this game, he can punch in 3 directions: straight ahead, upward, and downward. You can punch downward all the way to the bottom of the world, but thankfully, you can freely climb back up. In fact, I think you can break most terrain. You can't punch anything metal. You can also dig out a piece of the surface from where you're standing, and you can either chuck it, swing it, or ride on it. There's also terrain that can only be destroyed by explosives. At one point in the demo, there's terrain that can't be broken down by punching. So what do? You grab a piece of explosive surface and throw it. I can only imagine how much more creative this game can get. Similar to Mario Odyssey, the objective is to simply collect bananas. They're usually either found during what I presume is the main mission, hiding somewhere in the walls, or doing short missions where I kill a certain amount of enemies within a time limit. DK does have an echolocation radar that he activates by slamming on the ground with a press of the R button. Finally, the map is real time, meaning whatever terrain you break, your map will match it. Out of all the first party Switch 2 games I played, this is the only one I noticed some slight frame drops. I'm sure this will be polished by the final release, but it was something I noticed. Overall, I liked what I played here. It feels like a combination of breaking blocks in Minecraft and Incredible Hulk Ultimate Destruction. DK felt good. Punching terrain in multiple directions was satisfying. Not much else happens in this demo. I eagerly await to see what the team cooks up next. Next game on the list was Cyberpunk 2077. As I was walking there, I noticed that this game and Yakuza were sectioned off in the corner of the venue, because these games aren't exactly child-friendly. There were other third-party games in this venue, but I wasn't super into trying them, mainly because either I already played them on more powerful hardware or just lacked interest. I didn't play Yakuza 0 because I really don't know anything about the series, but from a few glances I saw, it ran perfect 60 frames per second. Anyways, back to Cyberpunk. So I don't know what specific graphics settings are used for the system, but it seems to run the game at least PS4 graphics settings. I did see, according to a tweet from Gene Park, this game runs a little better here than the Steam Deck. We'll see if that holds true when the final build's out. In this demo, I did a side quest that takes place in the DLC area. For anyone who doesn't know, the DLC area, or Dogtown, is notoriously more demanding on performance compared to the rest of Night City, so it pleases me to say that the demo ran more or less consistently at 30 frames per second. I think this version was made with motion blur in mind. Personally, I turned that setting off. I only found out there were different graphics settings near the end of my playtime, which were fidelity and performance. I'm gonna be honest, I didn't really see any difference, but according to CD Projekt Red, the final build performance mode should target around 40 frames. Not ideal, but still playable in my opinion. Lastly, the staff did tell me that this game supports mouse mode and gyro. Given my impression on this control scheme on Metroid Prime 4, I see this as a win. Here's my takeaway on this game. This will mainly be for players who only own Nintendo consoles and nothing else. Since this game does support cross progression, it'll be good for those who like to play on the go and don't own the Steam Deck. Personally, I'm already content playing on PC, but I'm happy that this game will reach another audience. Next up was the GameCube Nintendo Switch Online booth. It's about time Nintendo added the GameCube library. The controller feels exactly like a GameCube controller, with a couple new buttons for you to switch between games. Speaking of games, the 4 playable titles were Wind Waker, F-Zero GX, Mario Strikers, and Soul Calibur 2, and each performed exactly how they did in the original GameCube. Not much to say here, this section was exactly what I expected. GameCube fans will be in for a treat. Moving on to another new game was Drag X Drive, the wheelchair basketball game. The game's main gimmick was using the mouse controls on both Joy-Cons. As you can see in the footage, you control by pushing the Joy-Cons forward or backwards on the surface. Just like in Switch 1, the new Joy-Cons also have HD rumble. I'm only mentioning it here because it's the first game I really felt those haptics when pushing the wheelchair. This game does mention you can push on your pants, but I didn't use it because I had a bunch of stuff in my pockets. The game itself is a 3v3 basketball game, except we're on wheelchairs. I'm pretty sure the opposing team was either kids or casual family because I smoked them. Truthfully, I think this game is only enjoyable in short bursts. The push and control scheme does get a little tiresome, and I don't know if it's because of my posture, but my back started aching as the demo went on. While this game was fun to a degree, it's not something I'd personally add to my library. Now I was down to 2 slots left. I debated on trying Kirby, but then I figured it'd be a waste of a slot since the Zelda games were free. So ultimately, I settled on Super Mario Party. Now this game has 2 separate booths that count for 2 separate slots. One that features mouse-controlled minigames, and the other that features the camera. I disagree with them being 2 separate events instead of just one, but it is what it is. The first one I did was the mouse minigames. I actually joined this one quite a bit late, so I didn't get to play every single minigame, but that's alright. I'm not a hardcore Mario Party fan. I played this demo with 3 other other random people. The first minigame I briefly played was a game where I had to drag Toad out of this electric maze. Next up was this wind-up car one where I basically pulled back on the Joy-Con and aimed by tilting it on the table. Pretty straightforward. The following one, which is my favorite, is the spray painting game. Here I had to spray the most amount of ball bombs with my color before time was up. When I ran out of paint, I had to shake my Joy-Con before putting it back on the table. The fourth game I tried was this Jenga-like game where I had to stack the most amount of objects to gain the most height. The last game was me basically sorting mail either in a folder or trash. Overall, these minigames are neat. The second booth features the camera where me and 3 other players had to face it. Unfortunately, because of where I set up my tripod to record footage, I didn't get that much wiggle room for this section. Here, I got to try 3 minigames. One where it was basically Simon Says, one where it was another Jenga game, and one where I had to scream the loudest. I'm curious to see how this will work in the long run, but as of now, it feels like another Xbox Kinect. Anyways, I lost the minigames and Bowser Bird Be Alive. I'm glad I got to try these out, but this is something I'm definitely not going to invest in when the system releases. You could say it was a waste of my 2 slots, but it was something that was exclusive to Switch 2, so I didn't regret looking like a fool. So now I'm out of space, and the only things left to do were the Welcome Tour and the Zelda games. I went with the former because there was a slot available, but before I talk about it, I should address the big elephant in the room. Yes, I'm not particularly happy with the $80 price tag for Mario Kart World. I have no doubt the game will be amazing, but this sets a precedent that other developers and publishers are going to do. It's very likely that GTA 6 may cost $100. I do think the console is fairly priced. For what the features are offering, I think $450 is kind of reasonable. And as for the Switch 2 edition upgrades, I'm a little bit indifferent. Besides, PlayStation did this first. Anyone with the NSO and expansion gets those for free. There's other points of contentions like digital keys or other stuff, but honestly, I'm tired of the discourse. It's not fun talking about the Switch 2 when someone is constantly bitching drop the price all day. These games being more expensive was something that was inevitable. I just didn't think it'd be now. And honestly, this is just a symptom of a larger problem with our country. I'm not saying you shouldn't be mad about the pricing. I think it's 300% valid to be upset about it. I'm only bringing this up now because I know this will be an inevitable talking point in any Switch 2 video. I was definitely upset the day all the news dropped, but now I'm kinda over it. I chatted with several people here at the event, both players and staff, and the general attitude here was, it sucks, but it is what it is. So yeah, the pricing stinks. Maybe Nintendo can do something about it since the tariffs paused, but who knows. But to echo what everyone else said, it is what it is. That being said, Welcome Tour should not be $10 and should have been part of the system for free. I'm sorry, I really gave this demo the benefit of the doubt, but unlike Astro's Playroom, a fun platformer that celebrates part of PlayStation's history, which led to last year's Game of the Year, the Welcome Tour was literally just an instruction manual. In the demo, I walked on top of a giant Switch 2 and played a few minigames, which were really just highlighting features. And by minigames, there was one that was literally just a test to see if you know the difference between 60 frames and 100 frames. It's a really neat trivia for anyone not familiar with this jargon, but not something I'd spend money on. This isn't really much of a game here, just trivia. There was one part that I did find kinda neat where you play the first Mario level, but the pixels illustrate how many pixels 4K resolution has. Sorry, the footage looks bad, but that's what it was. But do you see the problem here? This is really something that should have been part of the system tutorial, not a $10 game that's really just a tech demo. And the worst part of it, it was boring. Thank God this didn't count towards my 6-game progression, because that would have really sucked. After my underwhelming experience, I cleansed my palate with the Zelda games. This booth gave me the option of trying out either Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom. I went with the latter. First thing they had me try out was the first 5 or so minutes of the game on handheld. Just like my experience on Mario Kart, this game looks beautiful on the tiny screen. It ran really well and the load times were very quick. Afterwards, I played it on the big screen and my eyes couldn't believe what they saw. While the controls were just as snappy as they were on Switch 1, seeing these games run 60 frames or more felt surreal. This was definitely the second best looking game at this event, in my opinion, which is crazy because I don't think the upgrades did anything to its visuals. That just shows how timeless the duology's art direction is. I don't know if I ever plan on replaying these games anytime soon, but if I did, I'm definitely taking the upgrade. Anyone who tried to get into the games or didn't finish because of FPS issues, give it a second shot. And that wraps up my Switch 2 experience, and I was rewarded with a Switch 2 backpack and a sticker. Pretty neat. I don't think I'd use it in public unless I want to get mugged. I'm very grateful I got my hands on the Switch 2 and these games early. Most of the Nintendo first-party games look and feel great to play, and while I won't be getting that many third-party games for the system, I'm just happy more people can play them. If I were to rank every game I tried out in that event, it'd be the following. Last is Welcome Tour. Next would be Mario Party. Then it'd be the wheelchair game, followed by Cyberpunk, GameCube, Zelda, Mario Kart, DK, and finally Metroid Prime 4. I'd say this convinced me to pre-order the console when it's available, but the truth is, I was already convinced since the Direct. I buy consoles because I want to play the games that are only on those systems, and Nintendo has not made a huge miss recently. Say what you want about this company, but at the very end of the day, it's all about the game.